Dr. Elena Martinez stared at the green and blue planet below through the viewport of the research vessel Aurora. The ship hummed quietly as it moved through space around the fourth planet in the Kepler 442 system. She had been studying alien life for 15 years, but this planet looked different somehow. The scans showed large moving creatures on the surface, bigger than anything they had seen before. "Elena, come look at this," called Jake Thompson from his station. He was the team's communication expert, a young man with bright eyes who got excited about every new discovery. His screen showed heat signatures, moving across the planet's surface in organized patterns. Elena walked over to his station and looked at the data. The creatures were huge, at least 12 feet tall, and they moved together like a pack. "Are they intelligent?" she asked. "The movement patterns suggest it," Jake replied. "They're not just wandering around. Look here, they seem to be building something." Lieutenant Commander Lisa Park joined them at the station. She was the military officer assigned to protect the research team. Lisa was calm and strong, the kind of person who made others feel safe. "If they're intelligent, we need to be careful." "About first contact," she said. The team had been in space for 6 months, studying different worlds for signs of alien life. They had found bacteria and simple plants before, but never anything this advanced. Elena felt her heart beating faster as she realized they might be looking at the first intelligent alien species humanity had ever encountered. "Let's get closer," Elena decided. "But we stay in orbit until we know more about them." The Aurora moved into a lower orbit, and the ship's powerful cameras began taking detailed pictures of the surface. What they saw made everyone on the bridge go quiet. The creatures were massive, with dark shells covering their bodies like armor. They had multiple arms ending in sharp claws, and strange lights pulsed along their skin in different colors. "They look dangerous," whispered Danny Kim, the team's engineer. He was a quiet man who usually stayed focused on his work, but now his face showed worry. "Everything looks dangerous until you understand it," Elena replied, though she had to admit the creatures did look frightening. They moved with purpose and strength, and those claws looked like they could cut through metal. The team spent the next day studying the creatures from orbit. They watched them work together to build structures, hunt for food, and care for their young. The more they observed, the more convinced Elena became that these beings were not just intelligent, but had a complex society. "I want to go down there," Elena announced during the morning briefing. "Are you crazy?" Lisa asked. "Those things are 12 feet tall with claws that could slice you in half." "But look at their behavior," Elena argued, pointing to the latest recordings. "They're gentle with their young ones. They work together. They even seem to play sometimes. That doesn't sound like mindless monsters to me." Jake had been working on analyzing the lights that pulsed on the creature's skin. Elena might be right. He said, "These light patterns aren't random. I think they're communicating with them." After much discussion, the team decided to establish a small research camp on the planet's surface. They chose a spot near a forest where the creatures had been seen, but not too close to their main settlement. Lisa insisted on bringing weapons and setting up defensive shields around the camp. The landing went smoothly, and soon they had a small base with their equipment and living quarters. The planet's air was breathable, and the temperature was comfortable. Elena felt excited as she stepped onto the surface of an alien world for the first time. They didn't have to wait long for their first encounter. On the second day, while Elena was examining soil samples outside the camp, she heard Lisa shout a warning. Elena looked up to see 3 of the creatures approaching through the trees. They were even more impressive up close, their armored bodies gleaming in the sunlight and their light patterns pulsing rapidly. "Nobody move," Lisa ordered, her hand on her weapon. The creatures stopped about 50 feet away and seemed to be studying the humans. Elena could see intelligence in their large eyes, and something else that surprised her, curiosity rather than aggression. One of the creatures, larger than the others, stepped forward. Elena noticed that its light patterns were different from the others, more complex somehow. She had a feeling this one was the leader. "Jake, are you recording this?" she asked quietly. "Every second," he replied, his voice tense but excited. The lead creature made a low sound, like a deep hum that Elena felt in her chest. Then it did something unexpected. It sat down, making itself smaller and less threatening. The other two creatures followed its example. "That's a peaceful gesture," Elena whispered. "They're trying to show us they're not dangerous." Slowly, carefully, Elena also sat down. She kept her hands visible and tried to look calm even though her heart was racing. The creature's light patterns changed, becoming slower and more rhythmic. Elena had the feeling they were pleased by her response. For the next hour, the two groups simply observed each other. The creatures seemed fascinated by the humans' equipment and clothing. They made soft sounds to each other, and their lights pulsed in what Elena was becoming convinced was a form of communication. When the creatures finally left, Elena felt like she had just experienced something historic. "Did you see how they acted?" she asked her team. "They were curious, not aggressive. They wanted to understand us as much as we wanted to understand them." Over the following days, the creatures returned regularly. Each time they seemed more comfortable around the humans. Elena began to notice individual differences between them. The large leader, whom the team started calling Rex because of his commanding presence, always approached first. A smaller one with brighter light patterns seemed younger and more playful. A third one was cautious but showed great interest in their equipment. Jake made breakthrough progress in understanding their communication system. He discovered that the light patterns were combined with subsonic vibrations that human ears couldn't hear but their equipment could detect. "It's like they're speaking with lights and sounds together," he explained. Elena tried to communicate back by using a light device to create simple patterns. The creature's reaction was immediate and excited. Rex approached closer than ever before and began creating complex light displays that seemed to be teaching her more about their language. By the end of the first week, Elena realized that these creatures were not the monsters they appeared to be. They were intelligent, social beings with complex emotions and a desire to communicate. When Rex began mimicking human hand gestures, she knew that first contact was going better than anyone had dared to hope. The real surprise came when the creatures began bringing gifts, interesting stones, rare plants, and even small artifacts that seemed to be art. They were trying to build a relationship with the humans, not just communicate with them. Elena smiled as she watched Danny teaching the playful young creature to play simple games. These beings might look frightening to other species, but to humans, they were beginning to seem like something else entirely, like loyal companions waiting to be understood. 6 months had passed since the Aurora returned to Earth with 3 volunteer creatures who had chosen to come with the human team. Rex, the large leader, had been the first to step aboard the human ship without fear. A smaller creature the team, called Buddy because of his friendly nature, followed, along with a female they named Lady who seemed to be Rex's mate. The journey back to Earth had been smooth, with the creatures adapting quickly to life aboard the ship. Dr. Elena Martinez stood in the briefing room at Earth Space Command, watching as military officers and scientists studied videos of the creatures. The beings had grown comfortable with their human companions during the long journey home, and their gentle behavior around people had impressed everyone who met them. But now Elena faced a much bigger challenge than first contact. She had to convince the galaxy that these creatures were friends, not enemies. Ambassador Zara Thompson adjusted her formal diplomatic uniform as she prepared for what might be the most important meeting in human history. The Galactic Federation had called an emergency session after learning about humanity's new companions. Representatives from 17 different alien species would gather to discuss what they saw as a serious threat to galactic peace. "The Federation is scared," Zara told Elena before the meeting. "They've been sending messages for weeks demanding that we get rid of the creatures. They won't tell us why, but their fear seems real." Elena felt worried about leaving Rex and the others behind on Earth, but the Federation had made it clear that the creatures were not welcome at the meeting. She had spent hours with Rex before leaving, trying to explain through their developing communication system that she would return. The creatures' light patterns had shown sadness. but also understanding and trust. The Federation meeting took place on a massive space station orbiting a neutral star. Zara had never seen so many different alien species in one place. There were the tall, thin, ethereal ones with their glowing skin, the small but tough rock people who lived on asteroid colonies, and many others she recognized from diplomatic files. But the largest group came from the hierarchy, insect-like creatures with hard shells and multiple eyes who seemed to be leading the opposition to humanity. Supreme Counselor Threshka of the hierarchy stood at the center of the Great Hall, his forearms gesturing dramatically as he spoke. "The humans have made a terrible mistake," he declared in the translation device that allowed different species to understand each other. "They have befriended the most dangerous creatures in the galaxy. These beings are not pets or companions. They are death itself given form." Zara stood up from the human section, trying to stay calm despite her growing anger. "With respect, Counselor, we have lived with these creatures for months. They are gentle and intelligent. They have shown nothing but kindness to our people." Ripple of fear sense filled the air as the aquatic depths collective representatives released chemicals that expressed their terror. Their leader, a creature that looked like a giant octopus with silver skin, spoke through a water-filled communication device. "The humans do not understand what they have done. These creatures destroyed the Harmony worlds 3,000 years ago. They consumed the entire Blue Sun civilization. They are called the Void Hunters, and they have never shown mercy to any living thing." The accusations continued for hours. Species after species stood up to share stories of the Void Hunters' attacks. They described worlds left empty, entire, civilizations wiped out, and survivors who spoke of unstoppable monsters that killed everything in their path. The evidence was overwhelming, and Zara began to feel sick as she listened. "But that's not what we've seen," Zara protested during a break in the testimonies. "Our creatures protect us. They're gentle with our children. They've never shown any aggression unless they were protecting their human companions." Elder Vexra, from the Wisdom Collective, an ancient species known for their knowledge of galactic history, approached Zara with sympathy in his large eyes. "Young human, we do not doubt your observations. But the Void Hunters are known for their cunning. They have tried to bond with other species before, always with the same result. At first, they seem loyal and protective. Then something triggers their true nature and they turn on their hosts. The bonding never lasts." Meanwhile, back on Earth, Captain Steve Rodriguez was dealing with his own crisis. The human fleet had been ordered to remain at the edge of Federation space, far from any populated systems. His ships were being treated like they carried a deadly plague, and other species refused to come within light years of them. "Sir, we're getting reports that some Federation species are mobilizing their fleets," reported his communications officer. "They're talking about quarantine measures and possible military action." Steve looked through the viewport at the peaceful stars, thinking about Rex and the other creatures. Back on Earth, he had spent time with them during the journey home and had seen nothing but loyalty and affection. The idea that these beings were galactic monsters seemed impossible. On Earth, Rex seemed to sense that something was wrong. Elena had left video messages explaining the situation, and Jake had been working to improve their communication system. Rex's light patterns had become more complex, and he seemed to be trying to tell them something important about his species. SISTORY Dr. Martinez received an urgent message from Zara at the Federation meeting. The ambassador's face on the screen looked tired and worried. "Elena, you need to know what we're dealing with. The Federation has detailed records of Void Hunter attacks going back thousands of years. They're not just afraid of these creatures, they're terrified. Some species are talking about declaring war on humanity if we don't get rid of our companions." Elena felt her heart sink as she read the historical records Zara had sent. The attacks described in the files were brutal and complete. Entire star systems had been left lifeless after Void Hunter raids. The creatures in the records moved like living weapons, unstoppable and merciless. But as Elena compared the historical descriptions with her own observations, she noticed something strange. The void hunters in the records always attacked in large groups, hundreds or thousands at a time. They showed no individual personality, no curiosity, no desire to communicate. They were described as mindless killing machines driven only by hunger and aggression. That description didn't match Rex, Buddy, and Lady at all. These three creatures were individuals with distinct personalities, emotions, and a clear desire to build relationships with humans. They had chosen to come to Earth, not been captured or forced. They showed creativity, playfulness, and even what seemed like love for their human companions. Elena began to wonder if the Federation was missing something important about these creatures. Maybe the void hunters who had attacked other species were different somehow, or maybe there was more to their story than the historical records showed. As the diplomatic crisis deepened, Elena made a decision that would change everything. She would prove that her creatures were not monsters by showing the galaxy who they really were. But first, she needed to understand why Rex and his companions were so different from the void hunters in the historical records. The answer, she suspected, lay in something no other species had ever achieved: a true bond between two intelligent races, based on mutual respect and understanding rather than fear and domination. Dr. Elena Martinez walked through the halls of the new Geneva research facility, watching as Rex followed beside her like a giant shadow. The creature's light patterns pulsed in what she had learned was his version of contentment. Other researchers stopped to stare as they passed, still amazed by the sight of a 12-foot-tall alien walking peacefully through their building. 3 months had passed since the Federation meeting, and Elena had assembled the best team of scientists she could find to study the bond between humans and the void hunters. The facility had been specially built to accommodate the creatures, with high ceilings and reinforced walls, but also with comfortable spaces where they could relax with their human companions. Dr. Carl Johnson, a behavioral psychologist who had spent years studying animal-human bonds, was working with Buddy in the main laboratory. The creature sat patiently as Carl ran various tests, his light patterns showing curiosity rather than fear or aggression. "It's remarkable," Carl told Elena as she joined them. "His brain scans show activity patterns I've never seen before. He's not just intelligent, he's emotionally complex in ways that most animals aren't." Elena watched as Buddy gently touched a puzzle toy with one of his claws, solving it in seconds before looking at Carl with what seemed like pride. "What makes them so different from the creatures in the historical records?" she asked. "That's what we need to figure out," Carl replied. "I've been comparing our observations with the Federation's files, and it's like we're looking at completely different species. The void hunters in those records showed no individual personality, no emotional bonds, no desire to communicate. They were described as a hive mind focused only on destruction." In another part of the facility, Dr. Nina Foster was conducting her own research with the younger generation. 3 small void hunters had been born during the journey to Earth, and Nina was studying how they interacted with human children. The young creatures, about the size of large dogs, but with the same armored appearance as their parents, played carefully with a group of children from the research staff. "Watch this," Nina said to Elena as they observed through a one-way window. A 5-year-old girl named Emma was playing with one of the young void hunters, who the children had named Spike. The creature was being incredibly gentle, using only the tips of his claws to push toy blocks around. When Emma accidentally fell down, Spike immediately moved to help her up, his light patterns showing concern. "The young ones adapt to human behavior even faster than the adults," Nina explained. "They seem to understand that humans are fragile compared to them, and they adjust their strength accordingly. It's like they're programmed to be protective rather than aggressive." Elena felt a warm feeling in her chest as she watched Emma hug Spike, the creature's lights pulsing with what could only be happiness. "The Federation thinks these are monsters," she said quietly, "but look at them. They're more like oversized puppies who happen to have claws." Colonel Rick Barnes, the military analyst assigned to the project, had been studying the tactical aspects of the human-void hunter partnership. He found Elena in the observation room later that day, his face showing a mixture of amazement and concern. Elena, I need to show you something. We've been testing the creature's combat abilities, and the results are both incredible and terrifying. Rick led her to a secure testing area where Lady was demonstrating her skills. The female Void Hunter moved through an obstacle course with impossible speed and grace, her armored body flowing like water around barriers. She struck targets with precision that would make any human soldier jealous, her claws cutting through metal like paper. She's holding back, Rick explained. During these tests, she's being careful not to damage the facility or hurt anyone. But Elena, if these creatures decided to fight seriously, nothing could stop them. No wonder the Federation is scared. Elena watched as Lady finished the course and immediately looked around for approval from the human observers. When she saw Elena, her light patterns brightened, and she approached with what Elena had learned was the creature's version of a smile. "But she won't fight unless she's protecting us," Elena said, reaching out to touch Lady's arm. "That's the difference." The breakthrough came when Jake Thompson made a discovery about the creature's neural structure. He had been working with advanced brain scanning equipment trying to understand how the Void Hunters' minds worked. "Elena, you need to see this," he called excitedly from his laboratory. Jake showed her detailed scans of Rex's brain alongside scans from the Federation's historical records. "Look at this area here," he said, pointing to a specific region. In the historical records, this part of the brain is almost inactive. But in Rex and the others, it's the most active area of all. What does that part of the brain do? Elena asked. "It's the bonding center," Jake explained. "It's what allows them to form emotional connections with other beings. In the historical Void Hunters, it's like this part of their brain was turned off or damaged somehow. They were operating on instinct alone, without the ability to form relationships." Elena felt pieces of a puzzle falling into place. So the creatures that attacked other species weren't evil or naturally aggressive. They were broken somehow, cut off from their ability to bond. "Exactly," Jake nodded. "And here's the really interesting part. Our creatures' bonding centers are more active than anything I've seen in any species. It's like they're designed to form incredibly strong emotional connections, but only with beings who can connect with them properly." Dr. Johnson joined their discussion, bringing data from his own research. "I think I know why humans are different," he said. "Most species in the galaxy are either hive minds, like the hierarchy, or solitary creatures, like the ethereal ones, but humans evolved as pack hunters with strong social bonds. We're naturally designed to form relationships with other intelligent beings." Elena began to understand the full picture. So the Void Hunters aren't monsters at all. They're social creatures who went insane when they couldn't form proper bonds. But humans have the right kind of minds to connect with them. Over the following weeks, the research team continued their work. They discovered that the Void Hunters had an almost unlimited capacity for loyalty once they bonded with someone. They could sense human emotions and respond to them appropriately. They even seemed to develop individual personalities based on their relationships with specific humans. The most surprising discovery came when they realized that the bonding process was mutual. The humans who spent time with the creatures also showed changes in their brain activity. They became more calm, more confident, and more protective of others. It was like the partnership made both species better than they were alone. Elena stood in the facility's main hall, watching as Rex played gently with a group of children while Lady helped researchers move equipment and Buddy worked alongside Jake to improve their communication system. These creatures that the galaxy feared as ultimate destroyers had become beloved members of the human community. She knew that convincing the Federation would be difficult, but the evidence was clear. The Void Hunters weren't monsters. They were intelligent beings who had suffered without proper social bonds with humans. They had found something they had been missing for thousands of years, a species that could truly understand and accept them. The real question now was whether the galaxy would accept this truth, or whether fear would continue to drive them toward conflict with humanity's new companions. Amy Clark was reviewing the morning reports in her office when the first alarms started blaring across New Britannia Colony. The settlement had been humanity's newest success story. A peaceful world where 3,000 humans lived alongside their Void Hunter companions. Amy had been the colony administrator for 2 years, and she thought she had seen every possible challenge that frontier life could bring. "Amy, we have multiple ships dropping out of hyperspace," reported her communications officer through the intercom. "They're not responding to our identification requests." Amy rushed to the command center, where the displays showed dozens of alien vessels surrounding the planet. The ships bore the markings of the hierarchy, the insect-like species that had been most vocal about their fear of the Void Hunters. Her heart sank as she realized what was happening. "They're not here to talk," she said grimly. "Send an emergency signal to Earth immediately. Tell them New Britannia is under attack." The first bombs fell 20 minutes later. Amy watched from the command center as explosions bloomed across the settlement's outer districts. The hierarchy had decided that the only way to stop the spread of human Void Hunter partnerships was to destroy them wherever they found them, throughout the colony. The Void Hunters reacted instantly to the threat. Lady, Amy's own companion, had been helping with construction work when the attack began. Her light patterns changed from their usual calm blue to bright red as she sensed danger to her human friends. Within seconds, she was moving toward the command center with speed that amazed even Amy after 2 years of partnership. "Lady, we need to evacuate the civilians," Amy said as the creature burst through the reinforced doors. The Void Hunters. Response was immediate. Her lights shifted to a pattern Amy recognized as understanding and determination. Across the colony, similar scenes were playing out. The Void Hunters that had been living peacefully among the humans transformed into something the galaxy had always feared. But their violence was precise and controlled, focused entirely on protecting their human partners rather than causing random destruction. A young colonist named Peter Sullivan was helping his companion scout move children to safety when a hierarchy dropship landed nearby. The insect soldiers that emerged wore heavy armor and carried weapons designed to kill Void Hunters. Peter felt fear rise in his throat as he saw them advancing toward the school. Scout's reaction was immediate and terrifying. The creature that had been gently playing with children moments before became a living weapon. His claws extended to their full length, his armored body seemed to grow larger, and his light patterns became a strobing display of aggression that made the hierarchy soldiers hesitate. "Protect the children," Peter told Scout, though he knew. The creature already understood. Scout moved between the advancing soldiers and the school with movements too fast for human eyes to follow. His claws struck with surgical precision, disabling weapons and armor without killing unless absolutely necessary. The hierarchy had come prepared for monsters. But they found something else entirely. The Void Hunters fought with intelligence and restraint, working together to protect the human colony while minimizing unnecessary destruction. Their reputation had led the attackers to expect mindless savagery, but instead they faced coordinated defenders who seemed to anticipate every move. Captain Steve Rodriguez received the distress signal from New Britannia while his fleet waited at the edge of Federation space. The message was brief but clear. The colony was under attack, and they needed immediate help. Steve didn't hesitate to give the order to jump to hyperspace, even though it meant entering Federation space without permission. "Sir, we're going to face serious diplomatic consequences for this," warned his first officer. "Let them complain later," Steve replied. "There are 3,000 humans on that planet, and they're under attack because of their friendship with creatures that have done nothing wrong." The human fleet arrived at New Britannia to find the battle already turning. The hierarchy forces had expected an easy victory against isolated colonists, but the Void Hunters had proven to be more effective defenders than anyone had anticipated. Ship after ship reported damage from creatures that seemed to appear out of nowhere, strike with deadly precision, and disappear again. Admiral Vaxrock commanded the hierarchy fleet from his flagship, watching in growing horror as his forces were systematically defeated by the very creatures they had come to destroy. The Void Hunters moved through his ships like ghosts, their claws cutting through armor and their intelligence allowing them to strike at the most vulnerable points. "How are they doing this?" he demanded of his tactical officer. "The records?" said they were mindless beasts. "Sir, they're working together in ways we didn't expect," the officer replied. "They seem to be communicating with each other and coordinating their attacks. It's like they're protecting something precious to them." When Captain Rodriguez's fleet joined the battle, the tide turned completely. The human ships fought alongside their Void Hunter companions with a coordination that amazed even their enemies. The creatures moved between the ships with impossible grace, their light patterns allowing them to communicate battle plans instantly. But what shocked the hierarchy? Forces most was what happened after the fighting ended. As soon as the threat was eliminated, the Void Hunters immediately returned to their gentle behavior. Admiral Vexra watched in disbelief as a creature called Buddy carefully bandaged the wounds of a captured hierarchy soldier, his light patterns showing concern rather than aggression. "This is impossible," Vexra muttered as he was brought aboard the human flagship. "The creatures in our records would have killed everyone by now. They would have consumed the entire planet." Amy Clark met the captured admiral in the colony's medical center, where Void Hunters were helping human doctors treat both human and hierarchy wounded. Lady stood beside Amy, her lights pulsing in what Amy recognized as protective alertness. But the creature made no aggressive moves toward their former enemies. "Your records are wrong," Amy told Vexra. "These aren't monsters. They're intelligent beings who form bonds with those who treat them with respect and kindness. They only fight when we're threatened, and even then they show mercy when possible." Vexra watched as a young Void Hunter named Spike gently fed water to a wounded hierarchy soldier who had tried to kill him hours earlier. The creature's behavior was so far from the historical records that it forced the Admiral to question everything he thought he knew about the Void Hunters. "We came here to prevent a catastrophe," he said quietly. "We believe that your alliance with these creatures would lead to galactic destruction, but what I'm seeing doesn't match our fears at all." The Battle of New Britannia became a turning point in galactic history. Video recordings of the fight spread quickly through Federation space, showing not mindless monsters but intelligent protectors who fought only to defend their human companions. The images of Void Hunters caring for wounded enemies challenged everything the galaxy believed about these creatures. As news of the battle reached Earth, Dr. Elena Martinez felt a mixture of pride and sadness. The Void Hunters had proven their true nature to the galaxy, but it had taken a war to do it. She hoped that now, finally, other species would begin to understand what humans had known all along, that these creatures were not monsters, but faithful companions who deserved respect and friendship rather than fear and hatred. The failed attack on New Britannia changed everything in the galaxy. Within weeks of the battle, 3 major species broke away from the hierarchy's war coalition and requested peaceful meetings with humanity. The Harmony Collective, known for their gentle nature, were the first to send diplomats. The Crystal Builders, who lived in asteroid cities, followed soon after. Even some members of the Depths Collective began to question their leaders' aggressive stance. Dr. Elena Martinez found herself appointed as Earth's first Void Hunter ambassador, a role she never expected to have. Her job was to help other species understand that the creatures were not the monsters from their historical records. She stood on the bridge of a new human ship called the Friendship, watching as they approached coordinates that Rex had given them through their improved communication system. "Are you sure about this location?" asked Captain Mike Adams, the ship's commander. He was a calm man who had volunteered for this dangerous mission because he believed in the importance of peace. "Rex has been very clear," Elena replied, watching her companion's light patterns as he studied the star charts. "His homeworld is in this system. He wants to show us something important about his people's history. The planet they found was dying. Where Rex's lights usually pulsed with bright colors, they now showed deep sadness as he looked at his homeworld through the ship's viewport. The surface was covered with the ruins of great cities, but no life signs appeared on their scanners. Only a few hundred Void Hunters remained, scattered across the empty continents. Elena and her team landed near what appeared to be the largest remaining settlement. The Void Hunters who met them were different from Rex and his companions. Their lights were dim, their movements slow, and they seemed to be fading away like flowers without water. Rex communicated with them in rapid light patterns, and Elena could see the sadness in his responses. "What are they telling him?" asked Dr. Carl Johnson, who had come along to study the creature's social behavior. "It's about bonding," Elena said, as she watched the exchange. "Rex is explaining that he found what they've all been missing. He's telling them about humans." The exploration of the ruins revealed the true tragedy of the Void Hunter species. Jake Thompson worked with their archaeological team to translate the writings they found carved into ancient walls. The story that emerged was heartbreaking. "They were created as guardians," Jake explained as they studied the carvings in what appeared to be a temple. "An ancient civilization designed them to protect other species, to form bonds and serve as living shields against danger. But when their creators disappeared, the Void Hunters were left alone." Elena began to understand why the creatures in the historical records had been so different from Rex and his companions. Without proper bonding, the Void Hunters had slowly gone insane. Their protective instincts had twisted into aggression when they couldn't find anyone who could connect with them properly. They had attacked other species not out of evil, but out of desperate loneliness and psychological pain. "They've been searching for thousands of years," Elena said quietly as she looked at the fading creatures around them, "searching for someone who could understand them and give them purpose again." Rex approached Elena with several of the dying Void Hunters. His light patterns were urgent as he tried to explain something important. Elena realized that he was asking if more of his people could come to live with humans. He wanted to save his species by introducing them to the bonds they needed to survive. The return journey to human space was different from their trip out. 12 more Void Hunters had chosen to come with them, trusting Rex's promise that humans could give them the relationships they desperately needed. Elena watched as these new creatures slowly began to show more life as they interacted with the human crew members. Meanwhile, Captain Steve Rodriguez was working with the Reformed Federation to establish new diplomatic relationships. The organization had split after the failed attack on New Britannia, with the peaceful species forming a new alliance that welcomed human participation. Admiral Vexra, who had been captured during the battle, had become an unexpected advocate for human Void Hunter partnerships after witnessing their behavior firsthand. "The humans have achieved something we thought was impossible," Vexra told the new Federation Council. "They have tamed the untamable and found friendship where we saw only terror. Perhaps it is time for us to learn from them instead of fearing them." The breakthrough came when Elena proposed the creation of the Guardian Corps, a joint organization where humans and Void Hunters would work together to protect vulnerable species throughout the galaxy. The idea was revolutionary. Instead of fearing the creatures, other species could benefit from their protection. The first Guardian Corps Academy was built on a space station between human and Federation territories. Young humans and newly bonded Void Hunters trained together, learning how to work as teams to help others. Peter Sullivan, who had fought to defend New Britannia, was among the first graduates, partnered with his companion Scout. "It's amazing how natural this feels," Peter told Elena during his graduation ceremony. "Scout and I don't just work together, we think together. It's like we're two parts of the same being." Elena smiled as she watched the graduation ceremony. Dozens of human Void Hunter teams stood ready to serve as guardians for any species that requested their help. The creatures that had once been feared as galactic destroyers were now becoming the galaxy's protectors. The real test came when the Guardian Corps received their first mission. A peaceful species called the Flower People had sent a distress call. Pirates were attacking their agricultural worlds and they had no way to defend themselves. Peter and Scout's team was among those sent to help. The mission was a complete success. The Void Hunters' natural abilities made them perfect for protection work, and their human partners ensured that they used only the force necessary to stop the attacks. The pirates fled when they realized they were facing creatures that could move faster than their weapons could track. But what impressed the flower people most was how gentle the Void Hunters were with civilians. Scout carefully helped evacuate children from damaged buildings, his massive claws moving with delicate precision to avoid causing any harm. The sight of these fearsome-looking creatures tenderly caring for the vulnerable changed how many species viewed them. Years passed, and the Guardian Corps grew into the most respected peacekeeping force in the galaxy. Elena often visited the academy to see new graduates, always accompanied by Rex, who had become something of a legend among his own species. His success in bonding with humans had saved the Void Hunters from extinction and given them a new purpose. On one such visit, Elena watched as human children played with young Void Hunters in the Academy's gardens. The children's laughter mixed with the creatures' happy light displays, creating a scene of perfect harmony. A group of alien diplomats stood nearby, some species that had once demanded humanity give up their monsters. "How did you know?" asked Elder Cass from the Harmony Collective. "How did humans see what we could not?" Elena thought about the question as she watched a little girl named Sarah hug a young Void Hunter called Star. "Maybe it's because we understand what it's like to need companionship," she said. "Humans have always been pack animals. We know that everyone needs someone who cares about them, no matter how scary they might look to others." Rex's lights pulsed with contentment as he watched the peaceful scene. The creature that had once been seen as a monster was now surrounded by friends from dozens of different species, all united by the understanding that friendship could overcome any fear. The galaxy had learned an important lesson from humanity, that sometimes the most fearsome appearance can hide the most loyal heart, and that understanding and compassion could transform enemies into family. The Void Hunters were no longer monsters to be feared, but protectors to be cherished, proving that love and friendship were the strongest forces in the universe.